Close your eyes and imagine, just for a moment, that everything you know about time is an illusion, that the past, present, and future aren't flowing in a straight line, but are instead happening all at once. That the ticking clock on your wall, the aging of your body, even the memories you hold so dearly, might not be as real as they seem. What if time doesn't actually exist? It sounds impossible, doesn't it? After all, we live by schedules, deadlines, the rising and setting of the sun. We measure our lives in seconds, minutes, years. But what if time isn't a fundamental part of the universe, but something our minds create to make sense of reality? Some of the greatest physicists and philosophers have questioned time itself, and their theories might just change the way you see everything. Maybe time is like a river, but not one that flows forward. Instead, one where every moment, every ripple, every wave exists simultaneously. Maybe the past isn't gone, the future isn't unwritten, and you right now are just experiencing one single frame in an infinite cosmic tapestry. Or perhaps time is nothing more than a useful story we tell ourselves, a way to navigate a universe that in truth operates beyond it. Tonight, let's drift into these mind-bending ideas together. Let's explore the theories that challenge time itself, from Einstein's block universe to the strange world of quantum physics, where cause and effect don't always play by the rules. Don't worry if it feels hard to grasp. Some of these concepts even baffle the brightest scientists. Just let the words wash over you and wonder, what if time is just a dream? And if that's true, then maybe, just maybe, you have all the time in the world to fall asleep. Time. We live it. We measure it. We fear its passing and try to capture its moments. But beneath the ticking of clocks and the rhythm of our lives lies a question so fundamental it might shake the very foundations of how we see the universe. What is time? Is it something that flows, always moving forward, never turning back? Or is it something else entirely, an illusion? A static landscape, already written, waiting to be discovered? Tonight, let's step away from the hustle of the everyday. Let's turn off the noise and drift into a deeper inquiry, one that spans centuries, from the metaphysical musings of philosophers to the mathematical formulations of physicists. We're exploring presentism and eternalism, two rival theories about the nature of time, two radically different ways of understanding what it means to exist and what it means to be. The illusion of the now. Close your eyes for a moment and try to focus only on the present, this instant, right now. Gone. It slipped away before you could hold it. And the one that followed, it's already fading too. We say we live in the present, but what is the present? Is it a single frame in an endless film reel? A knife's edge dividing what was from what is yet to be? For the philosophical view called presentism, the answer is clear. Only the present exists. The past is gone, the future has not yet happened. Reality in its fullness is just this moment, this fleeting, shimmering sliver of now. It's an intuitive view. It aligns with our experience. We remember the past, we anticipate the future, but we only ever live in the present. The past is memory, the future imagination. Presentism gives us comfort. It aligns with the way we feel time moving. And it's grounded in a sense of agency. Because if the future doesn't yet exist, then it hasn't been written. We can still shape it. But is it true? The timeless landscape. Now imagine time as a landscape, like a mountain range. You stand in one valley, the present, but the past valleys still exist behind you, and ahead lie valleys not yet reached, the future. You may not be in them, but they are there. This is the world according to eternalism, a theory that says past, present, and future all exist equally, that time is not a moving river but a frozen block. Every moment, every event, every breath you've taken and will take is already there, fixed. You are not traveling through time, you are located in time. This view may feel strange, even disturbing. If all moments exist, does that mean free will is an illusion? Are we merely passengers on a pre-written journey? Yet eternalism has strong allies in physics. Einstein and the death of the present. In 1905, Albert Einstein published his theory of special relativity. It changed everything. Einstein showed that time is not absolute. It doesn't tick at the same rate for everyone. It can stretch, slow down, or speed up depending on how fast you move and where you are in a gravitational field. But more than that, Einstein's equations revealed something astonishing. There is no universal now. Two observers moving at different speeds may disagree on what events are happening at the same time. For one, a supernova may already have exploded. For another, it may not have happened yet. There is no single cosmic moment we all share. No grand present slicing the universe neatly into past and future. And if that's true, then what makes the present so special? Einstein himself once wrote, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." Time in the block universe. From relativity grew the idea of the block universe, a four-dimensional structure where time is just another dimension like space. In this view, the universe is a static entity. All events, past, present, and future, are laid out across the fabric of space-time. Just as all places exist in space, all moments exist in time. You were born in one region of the block, you die in another. And somewhere in that structure is this moment, this exact second of your life. But it doesn't pass, it simply is. We feel time flowing because our consciousness moves from moment to moment, but the moments themselves don't move. The train of time isn't moving forward. We are just passengers, awakening in one car after another. It's unsettling. It challenges everything we think we know about change, becoming, and the value of now. The heart of presentism. Despite Einstein and the block universe, presentism still holds ground, especially in metaphysics. Philosophers like A.N. Pryor argued that tense is real, that the difference between past, present, and future is more than just grammar. It reflects something deep about reality. They ask, if all times exist equally, then why do we only experience one of them? Why is our awareness always aligned with the present? Presentists say the answer is simple, because only the present exists. That's why we're never surprised by the past or trapped in the future. We're always in the now, because the now is all there is. They also argue that eternalism robs life of meaning. If your entire life, every triumph, every loss, is already fixed in space-time, then what's the point? Are we just puppets acting out a play we've already performed? The neuroscience of now. But science complicates the picture again. Modern neuroscience shows that our perception of the present is a construction. The brain takes time to process information, to integrate sound and sight, to decide what's happening now. What we think of as the present is really a composite, an illusion crafted from signals arriving at different speeds. Our present is stitched together from bits of the past. And even quantum physics seems to defy the tidy story of time. In the quantum realm, events can be entangled across time. Cause and effect blur. The future can influence the past in subtle, probabilistic ways. If presentism is about a singular, flowing now, then reality doesn't seem to play along. A timeless reality? Some thinkers, like physicist Julian Barbour, go even further. They propose a radical idea. Maybe time isn't real at all. In Barbour's view, the universe is made up of static configurations, what he calls nows. Each now is a complete arrangement of the universe, like a still frame in a film. But there is no film, no motion, no flow. We feel time because some of these nows contain records, memories, fossils, clocks that suggest a past. But these are just patterns, shadows on the wall. There is no past, only now. Barbara's timeless universe isn't presentist or eternalist in the traditional sense. It sidesteps both. It says time is a story we tell, a convenient way to order experience, but nature doesn't need it. The emotional weight of time. Philosophical debates can feel abstract, but time touches us deeply. We grieve because the past is gone. We fear because the future is unknown. We hope because it might be better. If eternalism is true, your happiest day still exists somewhere in space-time. So does your worst. Is that comforting or crushing? If presentism is true, then everything you've loved is truly gone, lost to the abyss of non-being, and everything to come does not yet exist. It must be created. Is that more freeing or more terrifying? Time is not just a dimension, it's a mirror in which we see ourselves, and the way we understand it shapes how we live. The middle ground? Some philosophers seek a compromise. They suggest the growing block universe. The past and present are real, but the future is not. Time is still flowing, but only in one direction. Reality grows as events happen. Others propose moving spotlight theories, that all times exist, but there's a privileged now that moves along the timeline, like a spotlight on a stage. These views try to capture the intuitions of presentism while acknowledging the scientific strengths of eternalism. But none are without problems. The deeper we look into time, the more elusive it becomes, living in the mystery. So, where does that leave us? Is time an illusion? Is the present all that exists? Or are we just flickering nodes in an eternal tapestry of moments? The truth may be stranger than either presentism or eternalism can explain. Or perhaps the truth is both, and neither. Maybe time, like color or sound, is a feature of perception, not of the world. Maybe it's the mind that flows, not reality. And yet, we keep living. We keep waking up into new moments. We remember yesterday. We plan for tomorrow. We love, we lose, we change. The growing block theory. Is the past still there? Let's explore one of the lesser-known yet deeply fascinating theories about the nature of time. The growing block theory. It's a view that sits somewhere between the comforting intuition of presentism and the unsettling vastness of eternalism. A middle path through the metaphysics of time. A road that tries to honor both our experience of the moment and the mystery of what lies beyond it. So, get comfortable, let go of the ticking clock, and let's drift into a quieter place, where time is not just a measurement, but a question. Let's begin with a simple question. What exists? Not what used to exist, not what will exist, but what is. Presentism tells us that only the present exists. The past has ceased, the future is yet to be. Eternalism tells us that everything, past, present, and future, exists all at once. Time is like a block, a solid structure where every moment is as real as every place. But the growing block theory offers something else. It says that the past and the present exist, but the future does not. Time, in this view, is like a book still being written. Every sentence that's already on the page, the past and the present, is real. But the next page, It hasn't been created yet. Reality is not fixed. It's unfolding, growing, one moment at a time. The block that grows. Imagine time as a block, like a 3D sculpture. At one end is the past, the events that have already happened, the birth of stars, the rise and fall of empires, your childhood memories, all preserved like layers of sediment. Above that is the present, the very top of the block, the razor's edge where time is still being shaped, where experience lives. And beyond that edge, nothing? The future isn't part of the block yet. It's potential, possibility, a blank space waiting to be filled. As each new moment arrives, it becomes part of the structure. The block grows, hence the name. And so the growing block theory sees time as a partial universe. Not everything exists, only what has already happened and what is happening now. It's not a completed sculpture, it's a work in progress. Why does this matter? Because the way we think about time shapes how we think about life. In presentism, the past is gone. We grieve for things that are no longer real. The future is completely open, waiting to be made. In eternalism, everything is already there. Every moment, even your last one, already exists in some distant coordinate of space-time. But the growing block gives us something else. A timeline that is partially written, partially unfolding. The past is real, the present is real, but the future is ours to create. It's a theory that leaves room for change, for agency, for hope, and it honors our deep feeling that the past isn't entirely lost, that it still means something, that it still is in some mysterious way. The past still exists. Now let's linger on that idea. In the growing block, the past doesn't disappear, it remains part of reality. Which means, somewhere in the block of time, your first breath still exists. That moment you laughed until you cried. The people you've lost, they're not gone, not completely. They're just further down the structure of time, like pages in a book you've already read. This can be comforting, even beautiful. But it also means that pain still exists, suffering still exists. Not just in memory, but in reality. Just no longer at the leading edge of time. The growing block doesn't erase the past, it preserves it. It tells us that every event, every joy and every sorrow leaves a permanent imprint on the universe. The present has the edge. So what makes the present different? Why do we feel the now so vividly? In the growing block theory, the present is the frontier. It's the moving edge where new moments are added to the block, where reality is actively forming. We might think of it like the crest of a wave. Behind it lies the wake, the already formed ocean of events. Ahead of it, calm, untouched water, the unknown future. The present is special because it's where becoming happens. It's where potential turns into actuality, where choices are made, where causes give birth to effects. The growing block doesn't say that the present is the only real thing, but it does say that it's the newest part of the real. It's where the action is. But how do we know it's now? This raises a curious question. If both the past and present exist, how do we know we're living in the present? Couldn't we be trapped in a past moment, experiencing it as if it were now, just because that's the part of the block we're embedded in? This is called the epistemic problem for the growing block theory. If older moments still exist, and if people in those moments still felt like they were in the present, how do we know we're not just one of them? After all, the people of ancient Rome thought they were living in the present. So did your younger self. So will your future self. So what makes our moment the present? Some philosophers suggest that the present is marked by a kind of metaphysical freshness, an edge of novelty, a feature we can't yet measure but perhaps one day will. Others argue that maybe we can't know for sure, that we're just along for the ride, experiencing the now as it comes, trusting that it is the leading edge. It's an unsettling thought, but not unfamiliar. After all, we don't know what the future holds either. Yet, we keep moving. Is the future open? One of the most powerful aspects of the growing block theory is that it treats the future as non-existent. It hasn't happened. It doesn't exist, not even in some remote corner of space-time, which means it's open, undetermined, waiting. This is a big difference from eternalism, where every future moment already exists and we're simply passing through it, like a train on fixed tracks. In the growing block, there are no tracks yet, only possibility. Your choices matter because they help shape what gets added to the block. The story isn't finished, you are still writing it. That's a kind of freedom, one that many people find emotionally and spiritually meaningful. It makes space for uncertainty, for risk, for courage. Science and the block. But what does science say about all this? Einstein's theory of relativity challenges the idea of a universal present. According to relativity, what counts as now depends on your frame of reference. There's no single cosmic clock. This has often been used to support eternalism, the idea that all moments are equally real. But some philosophers argue that this doesn't rule out the growing block. It just means that the growing edge might be local rather than global, that the present may not be the same everywhere. Others point to quantum mechanics, where the act of observation seems to collapse possibilities into reality. Could this be where the future becomes the present? Could consciousness or observation be the engine that grows the block? These questions are still open, and perhaps they always will be. But the fact that the growing block theory remains compatible with much of modern physics keeps it in the philosophical conversation. It may not be proven, but it hasn't been disproven either. Memory, legacy, and meaning. Let's turn now to the emotional dimension. What does the growing block theory mean for how we remember and how we are remembered? If the past still exists, then the people we've lost are not entirely gone. They are real in some deeper, quieter region of the block. This doesn't bring them back, but it does preserve them. Your childhood still exists, not just in photos or neurons, but in reality. It's part of the structure of the universe. And your present, what you're doing right now, is being added to that structure, cemented in place forever. This can be both humbling and inspiring. It means that your actions matter, that the kindness you show, the words you speak, the love you give, they're not fleeting. They become part of the eternal past. You are building time itself, a quiet mystery. Of course, like all theories of time, the growing block is still just a model, a way of interpreting our experience, a metaphor with mathematical edges. It may be wrong, but even if it's wrong, it offers something profound, a way to see time not as a force that crushes us, but as a canvas we help to paint. It reminds us that the past is not lost, that the future is not fixed, and that the present is where reality grows. Not all at once, but moment by moment, quietly, subtly, inevitably. So here we are, at the edge of the block, the newest layer of reality. You listening to this, me speaking it. We are both part of the growing structure. We are the now that future generations might look back on. And just as you remember your past, one day someone may remember you, your time, your voice. Time keeps growing, and you are part of what it grows into. So perhaps in the end, the question is not whether the past is real or the future is predetermined. Perhaps the question is simply, What are you adding to the block? What kind of moment will this become when it slips from present to past? And can we live in such a way that, once written, our moments remain worth remembering? Time is an illusion, Julian Barbour. We wake to it, we age by it, we chase it and often feel it slipping away. We'll follow the ideas of physicist and philosopher Julian Barbour, whose work proposes something radical, something astonishing. Time, he says, does not exist, not in the way we think. So, take a breath, set the clocks aside, and let's drift into a deeper silence, into a place where all moments are still, where everything just is. Let's explore the end of time, a world without time. For most of us, time feels undeniable. It's the thing that separates our childhood from our old age. It's the reason clocks exist, the reason we can say before and after. But Julian Barbour has spent his life trying to understand the nature of reality, and in doing so, he's come to a stunning conclusion. Time is an illusion. According to Barbour, there is no flowing now, no movement from past to future. The universe is not in time. Instead, what exists are countless possible arrangements of the universe, what he calls nows. Each now is a complete, timeless configuration of everything that exists. You, your surroundings, the stars, the atoms. A frozen snapshot of the entire universe. But there is no motion between these nows, no sequence, no tick of the cosmic clock. Each now simply is. And what we experience as time, the flow, the change, the memory, is just the mind hopping from one now to another, creating the illusion of passage. Time as a story. Think of your life as a movie. You remember the scenes, you feel them moving, but the film itself is made of individual frames, static images lined up in sequence. If you could step outside of time, outside your experience, you'd see that the movie never moves. The movement is something your brain creates by interpreting one frame after another. Barbour believes the universe works the same way. Reality is not a flowing river, it's a collection of unmoving photographs, a vast timeless landscape of possible configurations. Each configuration, a now, contains within it records of what appears to be the past, footprints in the snow, memories in your brain, fossils in the ground. But they are just features of that now. There's no guarantee that a past actually existed before it. You might be in a now that seems to contain a memory of yesterday, but that doesn't mean yesterday ever happened. It's a startling idea, but it elegantly explains one of the deepest puzzles in physics, the problem with time. For decades, physicists have struggled to reconcile two great theories. On one side, general relativity, Einstein's theory of gravity and space-time, a theory in which time is flexible, warped by gravity, and intimately woven with space. On the other, quantum mechanics, the bizarre realm of probabilities, uncertainty, and subatomic behavior. Both are astonishingly accurate. Both describe our universe beautifully, but they do not fit together. And at the heart of the conflict is time. Quantum physics assumes a fixed background of time, an invisible clock ticking away. But general relativity treats time as dynamic, shaped by matter and energy. Barbour's idea removes the tension. If time doesn't exist, if it's not fundamental, then maybe we don't need to unify the two theories using time at all. Maybe we need to remove time from the equations entirely. And that's exactly what Barbour does. The timeless equation. Barbour worked with physicist Bruno Bertotti to reformulate physics without time. They created a framework where the universe evolves not through time, but through change. Not this happened, then that, but this state exists alongside that one. What matters is not the passage of time, but the relationship between different configurations. Barbour shows that if you remove time from the equations of motion, what remains is a kind of landscape, a space of all possible nouns. The universe, in this view, is a Platonia, a realm of perfect static possibilities. Each point in Platonia is a complete universe, a full configuration of matter, energy, and geometry. Some of these points contain beings like you, some don't. Some contain memories, others don't. But none of them happen, they just are. Why does it feel like time? This leads to a haunting question. If all of this is true, if the universe is timeless, then why does time feel so real? Why do we experience a past and anticipate a future? Barbour has an answer. He says that some nows contain records of other nows. A fossil is a record, a photograph is a record, a memory is a record. These features give certain nows the appearance of having a past, even though no such past exists. Imagine finding a book full of pages. Each page is a self-contained story. But some stories mention earlier events, giving the illusion of continuity. Our memories, our stories, our expectations, they all live within single nows. They are not evidence of a past, they are just features of that now. So time doesn't flow, we do. We move between different nows in consciousness, stitching together a narrative of change. But the story is inside the moment, not outside of it. The death of determinism. In a timeless universe, the future doesn't follow the past. Because there is no future, no past, only possible arrangements. This shatters our common ideas about cause and effect. In a flowing time, we believe that events cause other events, that choices lead to outcomes. But if each now is complete in itself, if it contains everything already, then cause is just a label we give to patterns we see. Barbour's universe isn't deterministic. It's not a train of dominoes falling through time. It's a landscape of stillness, where what we call motion is just a pattern in our thoughts. Each now is autonomous, complete, self-contained. You don't become who you are who you are, in that specific now. Memory without time. Now consider memory. We usually think of memory as a bridge between present and past, a trace of what has been. But in Barbour's view, memory is not a bridge, it's a feature of the now you're in. Your memory of breakfast doesn't mean that breakfast actually happened, it means you're in a now. That includes a memory of breakfast. This may sound disturbing, even solipsistic, but think of it this way. Memory is not proof of continuity, it's evidence of structure. The same way a fossil is not a time machine. It's a pattern in rock. Memory is a pattern in your mind. We experience a continuous life because the nows that feel like you are clustered close together, similar in form, building a coherent identity. But there's no guarantee that there's a next now coming, or that there was ever a before. You only ever exist in one now at a time. Consciousness in the timeless. So where does that leave consciousness? Are we flickering through a series of still lives? Are we passengers awakening in one moment after another, with no real travel between them? Maybe. Or maybe consciousness is non-local, not bound to time or place, but flowing like a light through the windows of different rooms. Each room is a now. Consciousness shines through it, briefly. Then it's gone. This idea aligns with ancient spiritual teachings, that the self is not a fixed entity, but a stream of awareness. Barbara's theory doesn't deny experience. It doesn't claim that your life is meaningless. It just asks you to consider, what if the meaning was always inside the moment? Not in the path between them, but in the now itself? The quiet beauty of the timeless. Far from being cold, Barbour's view offers a strange comfort. If time is not real, then neither is loss in the way we imagine it. The people we've loved, the moments we've cherished still are. They're not gone, they're part of the landscape, fixed, eternal, unreachable but real. Nothing is truly lost, it's just elsewhere in Platonia. You can't return to those moments, but they don't vanish. They are part of what is. And in a strange way, that makes each moment even more sacred. Because it's not going anywhere. It's not part of a stream, it's a jewel in the fabric of reality. Your life, your thoughts, your breath right now, this now, is part of the timeless tapestry of being, living without time. So how do we live in a world without time? How do we make sense of choice, growth, and purpose? Maybe we don't need time to have meaning. Maybe we just need presence, to live fully in the now, knowing that this configuration, this state of the universe, is real and complete and will always be. You don't need to rush toward a future. You don't need to chase the clock. You are already whole, in this moment. Barbour doesn't ask us to give up our sense of time. He just asks us to look more closely, to see that behind the ticking of the clock lies a deeper silence, a stillness that doesn't move but contains everything. The universe, he says, is not a story, it's a library, and you are one of the books. The end of time. So perhaps this is what it means when Barbour calls his work The End of Time. It's not a doomsday, not an apocalypse. It's a realization. That time was never something the universe needed. It was something we needed to make sense of complexity, to track change, to build lives. But underneath it all, there is only structure, only configuration, only now. And within that now, everything that matters, love, wonder, curiosity, beauty, it's already there. It was never waiting in the future, it was never buried in the past. It was always here, right now. So take a deep breath, not because time is running out, but because this moment is already eternal. Good night, traveler, and welcome to the timeless. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, a universe without time. What if it's not something out there in the universe, but something inside us? Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most haunting ideas in modern physics, an idea born from the effort to unify the two great pillars of science, general relativity and quantum mechanics. At the heart of this union lies a strange, beautiful, and almost terrifying equation, the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, an equation that describes the universe itself, an equation that, curiously, has no time. So take a breath, leave the ticking of clocks behind, and let's journey into the timeless. The two great theories. To understand the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, we need to start with two giants of modern physics. First, Einstein's general relativity, a theory of gravity, space, and time. It tells us that space-time is like a fabric, and mass and energy bend that fabric, creating what we feel as gravity. In Einstein's universe, time is not separate from space, it's part of the same thing, space-time. Time stretches and shrinks. It bends near black holes. It flows differently depending on how fast you're moving. It's a dynamic, flexible, elegant theory. On the other side is quantum mechanics, a theory of the very small, atoms, particles, probability. Quantum theory describes a world that is blurry, indeterminate, and strangely interconnected, where particles can exist in many states at once, where outcomes are not fixed but only probabilities until observed. These two theories are both stunningly successful, but they don't play well together. When you try to apply quantum mechanics to gravity or space-time, you hit a wall. You enter a realm where our current laws break down. This is the domain of quantum gravity, and it's here, in the attempt to describe the entire universe using quantum principles, that the Wheeler-DeWitt equation appears, the wave function of the universe. In quantum mechanics, every system, an atom, a photon, even a cat, has a wave function. This wave function contains all the information about the system. It evolves over time, describing how the system behaves. So what happens when the system is the entire universe? In 1967, physicists John Archibald Wheeler and Bryce DeWitt asked this question. They wanted to write down an equation that described the wave function of everything: space, matter, energy, all of it. They combined Einstein's field equations with quantum principles. The result was something remarkable. A single equation meant to describe the quantum state of the universe. An equation with no external observer, no outside time, and crucially, no t. Time, the symbol that appears in almost every other physical equation, is absent. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation does not evolve in time, because time is not there. A universe frozen in time? This shocked physicists. In standard quantum mechanics, the wave function changes with time. It evolves according to something called the Schrödinger equation, which includes a time variable. But when you write the Schrödinger equation for the entire universe and include gravity, you get something else. You get the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. And it says, the wave function of the universe does not evolve. It just is. That is, the universe is timeless. This is known as the problem of time in quantum gravity. And it raises a deep question. If the fundamental description of reality doesn't include time, where does time come from? Why do we feel time? Why do we remember yesterday but not tomorrow? Why does the world appear to change? The Wheeler-DeWitt equation suggests that change itself might be an illusion. Time as an emergent phenomenon. Some physicists believe that time is not fundamental, that it emerges from something deeper, something timeless. Imagine a still photograph. Nothing moves, everything is frozen. Now imagine you have a whole collection of such photographs, each slightly different. When you flip through them, they give the illusion of motion. But the motion isn't real, it's just your perception as you move from one frame to the next. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation suggests something similar about the universe. There is a static structure, a timeless reality, and what we perceive as change is simply the ordering of configurations. What some call a block universe, or Platonia, as Julian Barbour describes. In this view, each moment of the universe exists timelessly. What we call time is just our mind moving through these moments, creating a narrative. There is no cosmic clock ticking away, only a vast stillness. Clocks. Inside the timeless. So how do we explain clocks, heartbeats, sunrise and sunset? If the universe is timeless, why does everything seem to move? Here's the beautiful part. Even in a timeless wave function, patterns can exist, and some of those patterns look like clocks. In other words, even if the universe as a whole doesn't evolve, parts of it can appear to change relative to each other. Barbour and others describe this as time from change. We don't need time to exist on its own. We just need the appearance of change, an internal clock ticking inside a single configuration of the universe. Imagine a room full of pendulums. The room itself doesn't move, but if you look at the position of one pendulum relative to another, you can say, this one is ahead, that one is behind. That's how time emerges, not from an external flow, but from internal relationships. Timeless quantum cosmology. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation leads to a radical idea that the universe doesn't have a history in the usual sense. There's no single unfolding past, present, and future. Instead, there's a landscape of possibility. Each possible configuration of the universe, each arrangement of particles, fields, and geometry is represented in the wave function, and all of them coexist. There's no timeline connecting them, no preferred sequence. But some of these configurations contain records, like fossils, memories, photons from the past. These nows appear ordered. They tell a story. And that's where we find ourselves, in a branch of the wave function where things seem to flow, where entropy increases, where causes lead to effects, where time, though an illusion, feels real. The arrow of time. One of the great mysteries of physics is the arrow of time. Why does time move forward, not backward? Why do we remember the past, but not the future? Why does a broken glass stay broken and never unbreak? In the timeless view, the answer lies in entropy, the measure of disorder. Some configurations of the universe have low entropy, others have high entropy. And the arrow of time, the sense of past to future, is really the direction in which entropy increases. We happen to live in a part of the wave function where entropy is rising. That's why we feel time. But that's just a feature of our branch, not a law of the whole. Other branches might experience time in reverse, or not at all. What it all means. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation is more than just math. It's a mirror. It shows us that our experience of time, so central, so inescapable, might be a projection, a byproduct of our brain's attempt to find order in the quantum fog. It invites us to imagine a universe where nothing flows, where everything just is, and where the mystery of change lives not in the universe itself, but in the minds of creatures like us. It doesn't mean that our lives are meaningless. Quite the opposite. It means that each moment is a complete world unto itself. Every breath, every glance, every second of joy or grief. They're not fleeting, they're eternal, fixed into the structure of being, living in a timeless universe. How do we live with this knowledge? What do we do if time is an illusion? Perhaps nothing changes. We still love, we still choose, we still dream, but perhaps we live with more presence, more reverence. If each moment is a complete universe, then this moment, this now, is all there is. Not because the future doesn't matter, but because the now is already enough. You are not rushing toward an end. You are already there, already whole, already complete. A final reflection. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation may be one of the most mysterious ideas in all of science. It removes time, but it reveals something deeper. That perhaps the universe is not a story, but a structure. Not a song, but a chord. Not a journey, but a state of being. And perhaps we were never really going anywhere. We were always here, in the silence between seconds, in the timelessness beneath change, in the stillness behind the flow. So tonight, as you fall asleep, let the clocks tick on. But know that somewhere, beyond all sound, beyond all thought, the universe waits, not in time, but in being, eternal. where the commandeer food is the only thing food will not buy. Quiet, complete. Good night, traveler in the timeless. The B theory of time. Let's wander into a strange corner of philosophy and physics, one where time doesn't flow, where past, present, and future all exist equally, like locations on a map. It's a view known as the B theory of time, and if it's true, then everything you thought you knew about your life, your memories, and your future might need to be reimagined. So, get comfortable. A tale of two theories. Before we dive deep into the B theory, let's set the stage. In the philosophy of time, there are two main competing views, A theory and B theory. The A theory is intuitive. It's how most of us naturally perceive time. It says there's something objectively real about the present moment. The past is gone, the future is not yet, and time flows from what was to what is to what will be. We live in the now. It's always moving, always changing, and once something slips into the past, it's gone forever. But the B theory is different. It tells a more radical story. According to B theorists, time doesn't really flow. There is no privileged present moment. Past, present, and future are all equally real. All points in time exist permanently, like cities along a highway. And that feeling you have, that now is somehow special, and that it's moving forward, it's just a feature of your consciousness. An illusion, a quirk of how we, as human beings, experience the world. In this view, the universe isn't like a movie playing out frame by frame. It's like a complete film reel, already written, already shot, already complete. And we're just living in one of its scenes. J.M.E. McTaggart and the Paradox of Time. The B theory of time can trace its roots back to one particularly strange philosopher, J.M.E. McTaggart. In 1908, McTaggart wrote a paper with a striking title, The Unreality of Time. He argued that time, as we commonly understand it, doesn't exist. His reasoning began with a distinction between two ways of ordering events in time, the A series and the B series. The A series orders events as past, present, or future. It's dynamic. Things move from future to present to past. It's how we typically experience life. The B series, on the other hand, orders events as earlier than or later than other events. It's fixed. If Napoleon was born before World War II, that relationship is eternally true, regardless of your current now. McTaggart argued that the A series is contradictory and unstable. Why? Because for something to be present, and then past, and then future, it must somehow have all three properties at once, which seems impossible. If the A series leads to contradiction and the B series doesn't, then maybe the B series is the true structure of time. But McTaggart went further than that. He claimed that since the A series is essential for time as we know it, and the A series is incoherent, then time itself must be unreal. Strange, definitely, but that paper lit a spark. Many philosophers rejected McTaggart's conclusion that time is unreal, but they agreed that the B series might be the more accurate map of temporal reality. And thus, the B theory of time was born. Time in the eyes of physics. Now let's step away from philosophy and into physics. Surprisingly, many physicists lean toward a B theoretic view of time, and it all starts with Einstein. In 1905, Einstein published his theory of special relativity, a theory that forever changed how we think about space and time. In special relativity, there is no absolute now. Two observers moving at different speeds may disagree on whether two events happened at the same time. One person's present might be another's past or future. This means that the idea of a single, universal present moment, something the A theory depends on, just doesn't hold up in relativity. Instead, reality looks more like a four-dimensional space-time block. All points in space and time are equally real. The past isn't gone, the future isn't potential, they're just there. Einstein himself once wrote in a letter of condolence that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. That's the voice of B theory, whispered through the equations of modern physics, living in a block universe. If B theory is right, then we live in what's called a block universe. Imagine a massive four-dimensional structure. One axis is time, the other three are space. In this view, the entire history of the universe, from the Big Bang to the heat death, is laid out like a frozen sculpture. We, as conscious beings, don't move through time. We're just located at a particular point in this block. What feels like motion is just the unfolding of our brain states, like frames in a projector. This idea can be disorienting. We think of ourselves as moving through life, getting older, making choices, building a future. But in a block universe, your birth, your death, your happiest moments, and your greatest heartbreaks all exist eternally, fixed, permanent. You don't go to the future. You already exist in the future, just as you exist in the past and present. And if all times are equally real, does that mean free will is an illusion too? Free will, determinism, and the future. B theory has some heavy philosophical baggage. If the future already exists, just as vividly and concretely as the present, then, it seems, we're not shaping the future, we're merely discovering what already is. This raises deep questions about free will. Are your choices genuine, or are they just pre-written entries in the universal ledger? One response is the compatibilist view that even in a deterministic universe you can still act freely, as long as your actions align with your internal desires and intentions. But others are less convinced. If every decision you'll ever make is already fixed in the block universe, then how can you say you truly had a choice? Some philosophers argue this isn't just about physics, it's about how we understand agency. Maybe we need new frameworks to make sense of will and responsibility in a timeless reality. Still, it's hard to shake the existential chill of the idea that the future is already there, waiting. Time and consciousness. At this point, you might be wondering, if time doesn't really flow, then why does it feel like it does? Why do we experience the present moment as special? Why do we have memories of the past but not the future? Enter consciousness. Some theorists argue that the flow of time is a feature of how our minds process information. Like a moviegoer watching a film, our brains interpret a sequence of still frames as motion. Maybe the now is just a spotlight of attention, a psychological phenomenon, not a physical one. Physicist Julian Barbour even suggests that time doesn't exist at all. What we call time is just a series of nows, each one a complete configuration of the universe. Our sense of continuity is built from patterns within those snapshots. If this is true, then the flow of time is not something the universe does, it's something we do. The emotional weight of timelessness. Philosophy often feels abstract, but the B theory of time has a surprisingly emotional undertone. Some people find it comforting. If the past still exists, then your lost loved ones are not truly gone. Somewhere in the block universe, they are still laughing, still alive, still holding your hand. Others find it haunting. If the future is fixed, then hope becomes fragile. If all moments are equally real, then nothing can really change. But perhaps the most profound lesson of the B theory is this: every moment matters. Because every moment exists forever. Your first kiss, your biggest mistake, the time you stayed up all night talking with a friend, the afternoon sun through the trees. These aren't passing shadows. They're permanent threads in the fabric of reality. You don't lose them. They're still there. And maybe that's beautiful. A question without end. In the end, the debate between A theory and B theory is far from settled. Some philosophers argue that the flow of time is too deeply rooted in our experience to be dismissed as illusion. Others believe that future physics may yet reveal a deeper temporal structure we haven't grasped. Still others think we may be asking the wrong questions altogether. Is time a thing we move through, or is it just the shape of our story? And if the B theory is true, who are we really? Just echoes in the block, or something more? Thermodynamics and the arrow of time. Why time only moves forward. You wake up. Light pours through the window. Dust floats gently in the air. You blink, stretch, and begin another day. Simple, ordinary, but hidden in that moment is a mystery deeper than the stars. A riddle so old it has haunted scientists, philosophers, and poets alike. Why does time move forward? Why can you remember the past, but not the future? Why do broken eggs not unbreak? Why does ash not leap back into flame? We call this strange one-way motion the arrow of time, and tonight we're going to trace that arrow, not through clocks or calendars, but through the silent laws of heat, disorder, and entropy. This is the story of thermodynamics and how it might hold the key to time itself, the strange asymmetry of time. Look around you. The world changes. Buildings crumble. Ice melts. Leaves fall. We live in a universe where things happen in a particular direction. Causes lead to effects. Seeds grow into trees. People age, never the other way around. And yet, at the microscopic level, the level of atoms and particles, the laws of physics don't care about direction. If you filmed two particles colliding and then played it in reverse, you wouldn't be able to tell which version was real. So where does this direction, this arrow, come from? Why does the future feel different from the past? Why does time flow? To answer that, we need to talk about thermodynamics, the laws of heat and motion. Thermodynamics is the study of heat, energy, and how they move. It emerged in the 19th century during the rise of steam engines. But it soon became something far more profound, a framework that describes the behavior of everything from engines to galaxies. There are 4 fundamental laws of thermodynamics, but for our journey tonight, one stands above the rest. The second law of thermodynamics. It says this: in a closed system, entropy, a measure of disorder, tends to increase over time. Put more simply, things fall apart. Heat spreads out, energy dissipates, order decays into chaos. You drop a glass, it shatters. The pieces don't leap back into your hand. You light a candle, the wax melts, the flame flickers and fades. Entropy increases, and this increase is one of the few places in physics where time has a built-in direction. What is entropy really? Entropy is often misunderstood. Some say it means disorder, others chaos, but neither is quite right. Let's slow it down. Imagine a deck of cards, freshly opened, perfectly ordered, ace to king in every suit. That's a low entropy state. It's precise, rare, and improbable. Now shuffle the deck. Once, twice, 100 times. The cards are still there, still 52, but now they're in a random order, a high entropy state, one of countless possible arrangements. Entropy isn't about messiness, it's about probability. There are more ways for a system to be disordered than ordered. So, as time goes on, it becomes more likely for things to drift into higher entropy states. That's what the second law says. Not that order is impossible, but that disorder is overwhelmingly more likely. And that tiny imbalance scales up to the very shape of time. Time's arrow in everyday life. Once you understand entropy, you start to see its fingerprints everywhere. You feel it when your coffee cools, when your room gets messy, when your body ages. Left alone, heat spreads from hot to cold, never the other way round. Imagine placing an ice cube in a glass of warm water. Over time, the ice melts and the temperatures equalize. The entropy increases. The molecules of water become more mixed, more randomized. But you never see the reverse. A glass of lukewarm water spontaneously separating into ice and heat. Not because it's physically impossible, but because it's incredibly improbable. Out of all the ways atoms could arrange themselves, only a vanishingly small number would lead to reformed ice. So entropy isn't a force, it's a statistical truth. And it gives time its push, its direction. The universe is beginning, and entropy's puzzle. Now, here's a paradox. If entropy always increases, then the universe must have started in a state of extremely low entropy. But that seems strange, doesn't it? The early universe was hot, dense and chaotic, full of energy, uniform. So why do physicists say it had low entropy? Because gravitational entropy works differently. In thermodynamics, uniformity is high entropy, but gravity wants to clump. Stars form, galaxies swirl, black holes devour. So, a smooth, evenly distributed universe, like the one right after the Big Bang, was actually a highly ordered, gravitationally low entropy state. From there, entropy could increase, and it has. Over billions of years, stars formed, burned, died. Life emerged, and now here we are, sitting at the edge of time's arrow, watching entropy unfold. But why did the universe begin in such a special, improbable state? No one knows. This is one of the deepest questions in cosmology, and it hints at something profound, that the arrow of time may be rooted in the initial conditions of the universe itself. Time reversed. Let's flip the universe. Imagine rewinding everything. Smoke gathers back into a flame. Broken glasses reassemble. The dead rise. The old become young. If the laws of physics allow it, why doesn't it happen? Because the odds are unimaginably low. Entropy would have to decrease, not just locally, but everywhere. It's like tossing 1 trillion coins and getting heads on every single one. Possible in theory, but so unlikely that it never happens in practice. This is the power of the second law. It doesn't forbid reversals, it just buries them under layers of probability so deep they may as well be impossible. Memory, causality, and the arrow of time. But entropy doesn't just shape the physical world, it shapes your mind. Think about memory. You remember the past, but not the future. Why? Because memories are records, and to create a record, you need to increase entropy. A footprint in the sand, a photograph, a neural pattern in your brain. Each one involves change, irreversible change. It's easier to make a mark than to unmake it. So our sense of time. The story we build, the self we carry, is carved into us by entropy. Even causality, the idea that events cause other events, may be rooted in this thermodynamic flow. We think A causes B because A came first, because the conditions for B didn't exist until A happened. But without the arrow of entropy, that logic starts to dissolve. In a world without entropy's gradient, before and after lose meaning. Cause and effect become untethered. Entropy, death, and the end of time. Entropy is relentless. Stars burn out, heat spreads thin, structures decay. If the second law holds, then the universe is heading toward a bleak future, maximum entropy. A state called heat death, where everything is uniform, no more energy gradients, no more processes, no more life. No difference between here and there, between before and after. No time. It's a chilling thought. A universe with no surprises, no stories left to tell. And yet, we're not there. Not yet. We live in a brief, beautiful pocket of low entropy, where stars shine, life evolves, and time ticks on. Entropy and life, a rebellion within the arrow. There's something strange about life. We're highly ordered, cells, organs, thought. We resist decay, we grow, reproduce, adapt. So, are we violating the second law? No. Life doesn't defy entropy, it uses it. We are open systems. We eat, metabolize, excrete. We take in low entropy energy, sunlight, food, and dump high entropy waste back into the environment. By increasing entropy outside ourselves, we maintain order within. Life is a kind of entropy transformer, a local reversal at the cost of a broader increase. And that's the miracle. Within a universe governed by decay, tiny sparks of structure rise and burn bright. For a while, the human arrow, meaning in the flow. Now step back. Think about your own life, your memories, your regrets, the things you wish you could undo. Why do we long for the past? Why are we anxious about the future? Because we live on entropy's slope, we know we can't go back. Moments pass, youth fades, the people we love disappear into memory. Entropy doesn't just guide stars and atoms, it shapes our grief. But it also gives us meaning. Because the fleeting is precious, we value what's temporary, what can't be repeated, what time carries away. Without entropy, there would be no loss, but also no growth, no surprise, no story. Time's arrow gives us tragedy, but it also gives us life. Beyond the arrow, quantum whispers. Now let's dive even deeper. What about quantum mechanics? Some interpretations suggest time might be symmetric at the fundamental level, that under the surface, past and future are treated equally. There are even ideas like the two-time interpretation, where events are influenced by both past and future conditions. Others look at the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which governs the quantum state of the entire universe and contains no time at all. Timelessness. What if time is not fundamental, but emergent, a byproduct of entanglement, observation, or entropy itself? Then the arrow we feel might be a shadow of something deeper. Not a universal law, but a local illusion, like mist on a window. Real and not real. The final paradox. And now we come to the strangest thought of all. If entropy defines the arrow of time, and if entropy is just a statistical tendency, then maybe time isn't a thing that moves. Maybe it's just a way of organizing change. Maybe the universe doesn't evolve in time. Maybe the universe is a timeless whole with entropy gradients creating the illusion of flow. You're not in time. You're part of time, a thread in its tapestry, a moment on its slope, a flash of order in the deepening drift toward equilibrium. Circular and cyclic time, when the universe loops forever. We step out of the linear world, out of the arrow, out of the forward flow, and into something older, something deeper. Circular time, cyclic time, a rhythm beneath reality. Let's begin. Time as a circle. Most of us think of time as a straight line. One direction, one past, one future, never looping back. It's how we experience life. A child becomes an adult. An adult becomes old. The story ends. But not all cultures see it that way. In fact, many of the oldest human stories speak of time as a circle, a great turning, a cycle of death and rebirth. And in those stories, the end is never truly the end. It's just the beginning again. Ancient cycles, time before time. Let's go back. Long before clocks, before calendars. Back to when people watched the sky for meaning. The rising and setting of the sun. The changing of the moon. The return of the seasons. The ebb and flow of tides. Patterns, loops, repeat. To ancient minds, time wasn't a line, it was a wheel. In Hindu cosmology, time is cyclical. The universe passes through 4 great ages, or yugas, repeating endlessly. We are in the Kali Yuga now, the age of darkness and decay. But after it comes the beginning again, a new golden age, a fresh cycle. In Buddhist philosophy, time has no beginning or end. Beings are born, live, die, and are reborn. Caught in samsara, the wheel of suffering. Even in Mayan cosmology, history repeats in vast, measured cycles. Eras turning like celestial gears. These aren't metaphors. They are ontologies, entire worldviews where time is not progress, but return. Where you are not marching forward, but dancing in a circle. Nietzsche's Eternal. Now shift to the 19th century. To a man pacing through the Alps. Thinking, writing, asking dangerous questions. Friedrich Nietzsche. He introduced a terrifying idea, the eternal. He imagined that every action you take, every thought, every pain and joy has happened before and will happen again. An infinite loop of recurrence, over and over. Would you live differently, he asked, if you knew this moment would repeat forever? Could you love your fate, your amor fati, if it meant reliving it eternally? For Nietzsche, eternal return wasn't just metaphysical, it was existential. A test. Could you affirm your life completely? Most people, cat, the Ouroboros, a symbol of the self-consuming loop. The Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. It appears in Egyptian texts, in alchemical manuscripts, in Norse myth and Jungian psychology. A symbol of wholeness, return, and self-devouring time. It tells us that endings are beginnings, that the devourer is also the creator. It's not just an image, it's an intuition. That time, if followed long enough, might turn back on itself, not as a metaphor, but as a structure, a reality, cyclic time in modern physics. You might think these are just myths, poetry, metaphor, but now let's talk physics. And things get stranger. There are scientific models, serious ones, that suggest time itself may be cyclic. Let's begin with the Big Bang. For decades, we thought it marked the beginning of time, a singularity, the ultimate starting line. But what if it wasn't the beginning, but a bounce? Some cosmologists propose the cyclic universe model, where the cosmos expands, then contracts, then bounces back into another Big Bang. Endless cycles of birth and rebirth. The Indian idea of yugas suddenly sounds less mythical. The conformal cyclic cosmology of Roger Penrose. One of the boldest modern theories of cyclic time comes from physicist Roger Penrose. He calls it conformal cyclic cosmology, or CCC. Here's the idea. In the very far future, the universe will become smooth and cold, filled only with light and massless particles. At that point, time loses all scale. And without scale, Penrose argues, there's no meaningful difference between the infinite future and the Big Bang. They become the same. A future so empty and still, it becomes the seed of a new beginning, a new eon, another universe. And this has happened before, and will happen again, infinitely, each cosmos birthing the next, not through collapse, but through transition. The universe as a phoenix, dying in fire, rising from ash. Loops in quantum gravity, time's hidden circles. In quantum gravity, where space-time is granular and strange, some researchers believe time may not be continuous. It may come in loops. One such theory is loop quantum cosmology. It suggests that the Big Bang wasn't a beginning, but a bounce from a previous universe. A prior cosmos collapsed. Space and time compressed to a minimum size, then rebounded. Our universe expanded from that bounce. And perhaps this happens forever, each universe giving rise to the next. Cyclic, eternal, like a breath. Poincaré recurrence, when everything comes back. Now consider the Poincaré recurrence theorem. In a closed system with finite energy, given enough time, every possible state will recur. Eventually, the molecules in a gas will randomly return to their starting positions. Eventually, every configuration will repeat. And if the universe is a closed system, then you, your life, your memories, might repeat too. Not once, but infinitely. Everything returns. Eternal recurrence, not as myth, but as mathematics. A looping universe, hidden beneath apparent chaos. Memory, identity, and recurrence. But what would it mean to return? Would you still be you? Would a repeated life, with the same moments, the same feelings, be the same experience, or just a copy? Does identity require uniqueness, or does it bloom in the echo? In cyclic time, history is not forgotten, it's folded. And the self is not a straight line, but a spiral, looping, evolving, returning. Each loop not identical, but deeper. Like a melody repeating with variations, a fugue of existence. The psychological experience of cyclic time. Now shift inward. There are moments, rare, uncanny, when time feels like it's looping. You walk into a place you've never been but know exactly where things are. Déjà vu. You dream something, then it happens. You relive a moment not once but dozens of times in your memory. The same thoughts, the same emotions, again and again. Sometimes trauma creates these loops, memories that won't let go. Other times, it's joy we replay. A summer afternoon, a first kiss, a moment we'd live forever if we could. Psychologically, we are not linear. We return, we ruminate, we loop. And maybe we're wired that way because time itself has loops. Not always, but sometimes. Circular time and ritual. In many ancient cultures, ritual is time magic, a way of stepping outside the arrow. Birthdays, New Year's, festivals that repeat. Each year we return to the same sacred moment. But it's not the same. We are different. We are looping forward. These rituals are remnants of the old view of time. Cyclic, sacred, repeating, not progress, but pattern. Even today, we feel the pull of cycles, seasons, relationships, phases of life. We are not clocks. We are rhythms, breaking the loop. Of course, not all cycles are beautiful. Some are traps. Pain repeated, patterns passed through generations, habits we can't break. These loops don't just live in time, they live in us. And sometimes we want to escape the circle, to break the cycle, to step out of repetition and into change. But maybe awareness is the first break, to see the loop, to name it, to choose differently. Even in a looping cosmos, choice may be the wild card, the crack where the light gets in, time beyond time. So what does all this mean? Are we trapped in a loop? Or dancing in a spiral? Is circular time a prison or a symphony? Maybe time is not one thing. Maybe it has layers. Linear at the surface, cyclic in the deep, like waves on the ocean and tides beneath. Some moments move forward, some return, and some are always here. Wait, the beauty of return. So now, close the circle. You were born. You will die. But perhaps you will return. Not as a copy, not as a ghost, but as a rhythm, as a note in the cosmic song that repeats, not identically, but eternally. And maybe that's not frightening. Maybe it's beautiful. Because if everything comes again, then nothing is ever truly lost. No moment, no memory, no you. Ole paused, until the wheel turns once more. Time in quantum mechanics, when the clock stops ticking, we count time in heartbeats, in seconds, minutes, years. We track it through shadows on sundials, through quartz vibrations, through the slow decay of atoms. Time is everywhere, and yet nowhere. In the smallest corners of physics, beneath particles and waves, time begins to unravel. Tonight, we venture into that world, the world of quantum mechanics, where particles blur, where certainty fades, and where time itself may not be what we think it is. This is the story of time in quantum mechanics. And it's not a straight story. It's something else. The quantum world, a place without certainty. Before we talk about time, let's talk about the strange land we're entering. Quantum mechanics is the theory that governs the smallest scales of nature: electrons, photons, atoms. It's not just a different set of rules. It's a different kind of reality. Here, particles are also waves. They can be in multiple places at once. They don't have definite properties until measured. Everything is governed by probabilities, not certainties. And at the heart of it all is the wave function, a mathematical object that encodes all possible states of a quantum system. It evolves according to the Schrödinger equation, a beautiful deterministic formula that tells us how the wave function changes with time. But that word, time, already starts to flicker. Because in the quantum world, time is not as clear as it seems. The Schrödinger equation, a clock that doesn't tick. In classical physics, time is like a river, flowing uniformly. But in quantum mechanics, time plays a strange role. But here's the twist. In quantum mechanics, position and momentum are operators. They have uncertainty, they act on the wave function. But time is not an operator. Time is never uncertain, it's never measured, it just is. In the quantum framework, time is not part of the system. It's something we impose from the outside, a backdrop, an external clock, and that creates a deep tension. Because if the universe is fully quantum, Where does this external time come from? Whose clock are we using? The problem of time in quantum gravity. Now things get deeper. If we try to unify quantum mechanics with general relativity, Einstein's theory of gravity, we hit a paradox. In general relativity, time is not fixed. It bends and stretches. It depends on gravity, speed, mass. Time is woven into the fabric of space. It is dynamic. But in quantum mechanics, time is a static parameter. So what happens when we try to quantize gravity? We get an equation called the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. It's like the Schrödinger equation, but for the entire universe. And here's the shocking part. It contains no time at all. No t, no ticking, no flow. The equation describes a timeless universe. Everything exists in a single, frozen configuration. Nothing moves. Nothing changes. So where does our experience of time come from? That is the great mystery. A timeless universe? Let's pause. A timeless universe sounds absurd. You feel time. You age. You remember. But maybe time isn't fundamental. Maybe it's emergent. Just like temperature emerges from molecules moving, just like pressure emerges from atoms colliding, maybe time emerges from something deeper. Some physicists believe that what we call time arises from entanglement, the mysterious connection between quantum systems. In this view, subsystems become entangled, and from the perspective of a small part of the universe, it looks like time is flowing. But the whole system, the universe, remains static. It's only from the inside that time is born. The Page and Wouters experiment. Can we test this? In 1983, physicists Don Page and William Wouters proposed something remarkable. What if time comes from correlation? They imagined a universe split into two parts, a clock and a system. The total wave function doesn't evolve, it's static. But if the clock and system are entangled, then from the system's point of view, the clock does tick. Time is born not from evolution, but from perspective. In 2013, an experiment using entangled photons seemed to support this. When one photon was treated as a clock, the other's state evolved. But when viewed from outside, the whole system was timeless. This isn't just science fiction. It suggests that time is relational. It's not out there. It's between things. Quantum tunneling and time's ambiguity. Now let's look at a strange quantum phenomenon. Quantum tunneling. A particle approaches a barrier it shouldn't be able to cross, but in the quantum world, it has a small chance of appearing on the other side, like a ghost walking through a wall. But how long does the particle spend inside the barrier? That question has no clear answer. There are multiple definitions of tunneling time, and they don't all agree. In some cases, the particle seems to cross the barrier faster than light. In others, it appears the particle doesn't spend any time inside at all. It's not that we lack precision. It's that time itself is ambiguous in these situations. It resists being pinned down. Quantum superposition and the flow of time. Let's revisit superposition. A particle doesn't take one path, it takes all paths, simultaneously. Only when we measure do we see a single outcome. So what happens to time during superposition? Is the particle in multiple times at once? Is the flow of time suspended? Some interpretations suggest that time, like position, is not absolute in the quantum realm, that the particle's clock is smeared across probabilities, and when the wave function collapses, time itself crystallizes into a single thread. But that thread is just one among many. Quantum entanglement and temporal non-locality. Now let's talk about entanglement. Two particles created together become linked. Measure one and the other instantly responds, no matter the distance. This seems to happen outside of time, as if the connection exists in a dimension where time doesn't matter. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. But what if entanglement isn't just spatial, but temporal? What if events can be entangled across time? Some experiments suggest this may be the case. Particles can influence one another not just across space, but across moments. Cause and effect blur. Past and future become entangled. Time becomes a web, not a line. Retrocausality, when the future affects the past. What if time doesn't just move forward? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics allow for retrocausality, where the future can influence the past. In the transactional interpretation, particles don't just emit waves forward in time, they also send waves backward. Reality is formed by a handshake across time, a transaction between past and future. This flips our intuition. The future, helping to shape the present. It's not fantasy. It's an attempt to make sense of quantum strangeness. And it challenges everything we thought we knew about causality. The quantum measurement problem and the collapse of time. Now let's revisit the most famous mystery in quantum mechanics. The measurement problem. Before observation, particles exist in superpositions, many states at once. But when we measure, we see one outcome. Where does the other information go? One idea is that the act of measurement is not just spatial, but temporal. That in choosing one outcome, we are also collapsing a version of time. A particular history locks into place. Not just the present, but the past is chosen. The observer doesn't just affect reality. The observer helps construct time. Is time fundamental or emergent? All of this leads to a fundamental question. Is time built into the fabric of reality, or is it something that emerges like a mirage? If you zoom out far enough, look at the entire universe as a single quantum state, there may be no time at all. Only relationships, only structures, only a static web of correlation. From that stillness, time arises. Locally, temporarily, through entanglement and perspective, like a wave rippling through still water. Time as illusion, but a necessary one, living in a quantum world. So what does this mean for us? Are we frozen in a timeless block? Are our choices real? Are we moving forward, or just unfolding like pages in a book already written? Maybe it doesn't matter, because our experience of time is real to us. We feel its flow. We tell our stories. We grieve. We hope. We change. Even if time is emergent, even if it's stitched together from quantum threads, it's the stage on which our lives unfold, and that matters. That's real. Time, death, and the quantum eternal. Quantum mechanics whispers something strange, that the future is not yet fixed, that the past is not fully gone, that time may not be linear, or single, or real. In that whisper, some hear hope. If time is a construction, maybe death is not the end. Maybe the moments we've lost still exist. Maybe the people we loved are still out there. Not in fantasy, but in structure, held in the quiet symphony of the wave function, timeless. Wait. The problem of now, why this moment feels real. What is now? We say things like, I'm living in the now. We tell each other to be present. But what exactly is now? Is it a duration, a sliver of time, A single point? A breath? If you try to measure now, it slips away. If you try to hold it, it's already gone. One philosopher called it the razor's edge of time. Another said it was the moving spotlight of consciousness. But what makes now different from any other moment? Why does this moment feel alive and the rest feel like shadow? That's the heart of the problem. The world feels like it has a present, a real, flowing, immediate now. But physics doesn't see it that way. The block universe, where all moments exist. Let's turn to Einstein. In the early 20th century, he changed how we think about time and space. In his theory of special relativity, time is no longer universal. Two observers, moving at different speeds, may disagree on whether two events happen at the same time. This kills the idea of a single, shared now. There is no absolute present. Instead, space and time blend into something called space-time, a four-dimensional fabric where all events, past, present, and future, exist equally. This view is known as the block universe. In the block universe, time doesn't flow. It simply is. The past is still there, the future already exists. Every moment is equally real. From this perspective, the universe is like a frozen sculpture, timeless and eternal. So where then is now? What makes this moment feel special? The answer is unclear. The moving spotlight and the illusion of flow. To rescue the feeling of now, some philosophers proposed the moving spotlight theory. Imagine a highlighter sweeping across the block universe. All moments exist, but only one is illuminated, the present. That's the moment we feel as now. Tomorrow, a different moment will be lit. Yesterday's spotlight has moved on. This gives us the feeling of a flow of now moving forward. But it raises more questions. What controls the spotlight? What determines which moment gets illuminated? And if all moments are equally real, why do we experience only one? Others go further and say there's no spotlight at all. No movement, no flow, just your consciousness, trapped in a single moment under the illusion of motion. McTaggart's paradox, the unreality of time. In 1908, philosopher J.M.E. McTaggart shook the foundations of time with a paper titled The Unreality of Time. He argued that time as we experience it is contradictory. He made a distinction between two ways of talking about time. The A series, past, present, and future. The B series, earlier than, later than. The A season is dynamic. Things move from future to present to past. But McTaggart argued that this leads to paradoxes. For something to become past, it must once have been present, and before that, future. That means events have to possess all three properties, past, present, and future, which seems impossible. He concluded, the A Caesar is incoherent, and if the A Caesar is essential to time, then time is not real. Most philosophers rejected his final conclusion, but many agreed. The flow of time, the feeling of now, doesn't exist in the physical world. It's a feature of our minds, a projection, the neuroscience of now. Let's zoom in, inside your brain. You might think that now is a single point, infinitely brief. But the brain doesn't work that way. Neurologists estimate that our present moment is actually a window about 2 to 3 seconds wide. It's called the specious present. That's how long your brain holds sounds, visuals, and thoughts together to form a coherent experience. This means your now is not a point, it's a construction. And it's different for different senses. Light reaches your eyes faster than sound reaches your ears. Your brain delays some inputs and speeds others up, so everything syncs together into what feels like a single, seamless moment. In truth, your now is a simulation, one your mind is constantly stitching together. The physics of timelessness. Let's go deeper in quantum gravity, where physicists try to merge general relativity with quantum mechanics. Time starts to disappear. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which describes the entire universe's wave function, contains no time variable at all. No ticking, no progression. The universe, at its deepest level, may be timeless. Change, flow, causality may all be emergent features of how subsystems relate to each other, not of the universe itself. In this picture, time arises inside the universe, not as a background against which it plays. And now, just a local perspective, one that feels real because we're in it, but not special in the grand scheme. Consciousness and the spotlight of attention. But what makes now feel so urgent, so present? Some psychologists believe it's tied to attention. Your mind focuses on the current moment, because that's where action happens. The present is where decisions are made, where threats appear, where rewards lie. Evolution shaped us to care about now, and so our entire sensory system is built to prioritize it. But just because something feels real doesn't mean it's objectively real. The smell of a rose is real to you, but it's not in the rose. It's your brain interpreting molecules. In the same way, now is not in the universe. It's in you. Dreams, memory, and temporal ambiguity. Now think about a dream. You're walking through a forest. Then suddenly, you're flying. Then you're someone else entirely. Time feels different, elastic. There's a now, but it's slippery. In memory, it's the same. You recall a childhood moment, and for a few seconds, it feels alive, present, real. That remembered now flickers like flame, and then vanishes. These altered states reveal something strange, that our sense of the present is not fixed. It can stretch, collapse, disappear. Even in waking life, time can feel slow or fast or out of sync. Now is not one thing. It's a shifting window, a mood, a rhythm, a state of awareness. Julian Barbour's Timeless Nows. Physicist Julian Barbour offers a radical view. He believes time doesn't exist, only a collection of static moments. He calls them nows. Each now is a complete configuration of the universe, a still frame, like a snapshot in a cosmic photo album. What we call motion is just our brain flipping through these snapshots in a certain order. But the sequence itself is not flowing. It's just there. All nows exist equally, and our consciousness hops from one to another like pages in a flipbook. Barbour calls this realm Platonia, a timeless landscape of all possible nows. From this view, now is not a moving point. It's a location, not the present, just a place. The problem of the preferred moment. Here's the paradox. If all moments are equally real, why are you experiencing this one? Why this breath? This second? This thought? Out of all the billions of possible nows, why are you here? Some call this the problem of the privileged present. It's like walking into a library filled with every book ever written and finding yourself in one exact paragraph on one page. Why that one? Physics can't answer that. Some say it's pure chance. Others say it's a limitation of consciousness. We exist in the moment, but we can't step outside of it. The mystery of now is that we are inside it. Always. The psychology of presence. Now let's return to the lived experience. Think about moments when time disappears. When you're so immersed in something that the clock vanishes. A song, a sunset, a kiss. This is sometimes called flow, a state of pure presence. In those moments, the past and future fall away. Only now remains, and it feels real, vivid, eternal. Maybe the mystery of now isn't that we experience it, but that we so often don't. We're distracted, caught in loops of thought, drifting between memory and anticipation. But occasionally the curtain lifts, and for a breath, we are truly here. Death, eternity, and the last now. Now consider this. If there's no absolute flow of time, if all moments exist equally, then perhaps death is not an end. Perhaps your last moment, your final now, still exists. Somewhere, forever. Not in a ghostly sense, not as afterlife, but as structure. Just as your first breath still exists in the block universe, so does your last. Every now is eternal, including this one. You are not moving through time. You are being experienced, one now at a time. And maybe that's enough. The holographic principle. Is reality a projection? Imagine standing in front of a mirror. You see yourself, your face, your body, reflected perfectly, but you know it's just an image, a two-dimensional surface mimicking a three-dimensional shape. Now, what if the entire universe works the same way? What if everything you see, hear, touch, every star, every black hole, every planet, is just a projection, a three-dimensional world encoded on a distant two-dimensional surface? Tonight we step into one of the strangest and most mind-bending ideas in modern physics. It's called the holographic principle, and if it's true, reality isn't what it seems. A universe made of information. Let's begin with something simple, or at least something that seems simple. Not in the sense of news or data on your phone, but in the deepest sense. Every object, every atom, every physical system holds information. A rock has mass, position, temperature, a quantum state. Your body, your brain, the screen you're looking at are all arrangements of information, and when physics breaks something down, that's what it finds. Not just matter, not just energy, but patterns, bits, units, distinctions, and in some sense, the universe might be nothing but information. Black holes and the paradox of information loss. Now, let's turn to the problem that started it all. Black holes, the darkest, densest regions in the universe. Places where gravity is so strong not even light can escape. In 1974, Stephen Hawking made a shocking discovery. Black holes aren't perfectly black. They emit radiation, what we now call Hawking radiation. And over time, this radiation causes them to evaporate. Eventually, they disappear. Gone. But here's the paradox. If a black hole swallows information about matter, quantum states, anything, and then evaporates into featureless radiation, that information is lost. And that violates one of the most fundamental rules of quantum mechanics. Information can never be destroyed. So, physicists faced a crisis. Where does the information go? The event horizon as a storage device. One idea came from physicist Gerard T. Hooft and later Leonard Susskind. They asked, what if the information isn't inside the black hole at all? What if it's stored on the surface? That surface is called the event horizon, the boundary beyond which nothing returns. And here's the strange part. The amount of information a black hole can store is not proportional to its volume, but to its surface area. This was discovered by physicist Jacob Bekenstein and it changed everything. Think about that, not volume but area. It's as if the entire three-dimensional contents of a black hole can be encoded on a two-dimensional shell. A hologram, the birth of the holographic principle. From this insight, a radical idea was born. What if this isn't just about black holes? What if it applies to everything? What if the entire universe, everything inside space, is actually encoded on a distant surface? A boundary we can't see. A cosmic horizon. This is the holographic principle. It suggests that our three-dimensional world is a kind of projection, that every moment, every particle, every breath is part of a deeper code, written on a two-dimensional boundary far beyond our perception, like a cosmic hard drive storing the universe in flat space. A hologram, but not an illusion. Now let's clear something up. When we say hologram, we don't mean the world is fake. This isn't the Matrix. You're not dreaming. A hologram is real, but its dimensionality is different than it appears. It's like a photograph that contains depth through interference. You can touch things, you can measure them, but the fundamental reality might lie on the boundary. What we experience as volume, space, and depth might be the unfolding of a deeper surface code, not less real, just differently real. String theory and the ADS/CFT correspondence. In the late 1990s, physicist Juan Maldacena made a breakthrough. He found a concrete realization of the holographic principle within the framework of string theory. It's called the ADS/CFT correspondence. Here's the idea. There's a kind of universe called anti-de Sitter space, a universe with negative curvature, like a saddle. And there's a conformal field theory, a type of quantum field theory that lives on the boundary of that space. Maldacena showed that these two are equivalent. A gravity-based world in the bulk is identical to a non-gravitational theory on the edge. Two completely different descriptions, same physics. It's like a movie and its script, very different forms, but telling the same story. This was the first strong evidence for the holographic principle, not a metaphor, but a precise mathematical duality. Gravity as an illusion? Now things get weirder. If this principle holds, not just in special universes, but in ours, then gravity itself may be an illusion, a force that emerges from information on a lower dimensional surface. Just as temperature emerges from atoms, gravity could emerge from bits on a boundary. This flips our picture of the universe. What we call space is emergent. What we call mass is entropic. What we call gravity is a shadow, not a fundamental force, but a side effect of something deeper, of information flow, of entanglement, of a distant, flat reality beyond the veil. Reality as entanglement. One of the most intriguing ideas to emerge from holography is this. Space is built from entanglement. Quantum entanglement, when two particles become linked, is usually thought of as a feature of particles. But what if it's the glue of reality? In the ADS/CFT framework, researchers found that the geometry of space, its shape, its curves, even its dimensions, can be reconstructed from patterns of entanglement on the boundary. No entanglement, no space. Break the links, the geometry collapses. This suggests that space-time is woven from quantum relationships. You aren't just in space. You're part of a massive quantum network. Reality as entangled code. The universe's horizon, our own holographic screen. We live in a universe with a cosmic horizon, the edge of the observable universe. Beyond it, light has not yet had time to reach us. Some theorists believe that our universe might be holographically projected from that boundary, a shell of information infinitely distant encoding everything we see, every galaxy, every planet, every memory. Like a vast screen projecting a 3D story. We're not watching it, we're in it. Living in the story, living in the code. Holography and black hole firewalls. The holographic principle might also resolve one of the strangest debates in physics, the black hole firewall paradox. In brief, if information is preserved on the event horizon and also exists inside the black hole, does that violate quantum theory? Does it break the rules? Some physicists say yes, and propose that a firewall, a violent wall of energy, must exist at the event horizon. Others argue that the holographic principle avoids the conflict. The interior of the black hole isn't real in itself, it's a projection. There's no need to duplicate information, no paradox, just one surface, one code, one truth. Are we living in a hologram? Now the question everyone asks. Are we living in a hologram? The answer is maybe. We don't know if the holographic principle applies to our universe. It's been shown in specific spacetimes, but our universe has positive curvature. It's expanding, it's complex, and yet, every year physicists find new hints, new patterns, new symmetries that suggest something deeper. The idea that volume emerges from surface, that space emerges from entanglement. That time might be a feature of computation. If it's true, then you, your body, your mind, your life, are encoded on a cosmic boundary, a pixel in a vast hologram, not less meaningful, but perhaps more wondrous, the metaphysics of projection. But even beyond physics, this idea touches something ancient. The notion that the world is not quite as it seems. In Plato's cave, shadows dance on the wall, mere reflections of a higher reality. In Eastern philosophy, the material world is Maya, illusion or appearance. In dreams, we live entire lives in images with no substance. What the holographic principle does is take that intuition and give it mathematical teeth. The possibility that reality itself is projected, not false, but filtered, not fake, but emergent. What we see is not the thing, but the pattern, consciousness, and the edge of the screen. Now, ask yourself, where is consciousness in all this? Are our thoughts part of the projection, or something else entirely? If your body is part of the hologram, is your mind too? Or is consciousness what reads the code? What renders the image? Some believe consciousness is woven into space-time. Others think it's fundamental. Still others say it emerges from information. But if everything is encoded, then perhaps your awareness is not inside the projection. Perhaps it's watching it outside the screen, looking in. The beauty of a projected world. So what do we do with all this? What if space is not real? What if depth is illusion? What if reality is 2D at heart? Then we must look again, not with eyes, but with understanding. Because even a hologram contains truth. The patterns we live in are still ours. The stories we tell still matter. Love, loss, wonder, meaning, all of it is written in the code. Even if the universe is projected, the beauty is real, and the mystery even more profound. Time in dreams, the clock inside the mind. Time is supposed to be steady, second by second, tick by tick. We live by it, work by it, age by it. But every night, in sleep, that sense of order slips away. You fall into a dream, and time becomes a whisper. Moments stretch, seconds collapse, hours pass in minutes, or minutes become an eternity. Time in dreams does not obey the clock. And tonight, we're going to wander into that other realm, where memory folds, where cause and effect blur, where time becomes a fluid thing, shaped by feeling, not by fact. This is the mystery of time in dreams. A strange clock starts ticking. You close your eyes, darkness washes over you, and then, somehow, you're standing in a field you don't remember arriving in. The sky is violet, the trees don't cast shadows, and a stranger is speaking in a voice you know you've never heard, but feels familiar. You turn to respond, and suddenly, you're somewhere else. A hallway, a childhood home, a city that doesn't exist. Time in dreams doesn't move forward like it does when you're awake. It skips, it loops, it bends. Sometimes you're late for something you've already missed. Sometimes you remember events that never happened. Sometimes you know the ending before the story has begun. Dream time is its own dimension, and it plays by its own rules. How long do dreams actually last? One of the most common questions people ask is simple. How long is a dream? If you dream of an entire day, does that day actually pass? Does dream time stretch real time? Or is it compressed? Studies show that most dreams, at least those we remember, happen during REM sleep. Each REM phase lasts around 10 to 30 minutes, and we go through several each night. So most dreams unfold in a matter of minutes. And yet, the experience of those dreams can feel like hours. Some researchers suggest that dreams generally match real-time durations, but they contain more narrative density. Like a movie montage condensing a decade into a few seconds, our dreams compress the sense of story. Not time itself, but the feeling of time, the illusion of unfolding. It's not that dreams last longer, it's that they feel deeper. The elasticity of dream time. In dreams, time is not rigid. It stretches and snaps like rubber. You might relive an entire life only to wake up after 5 minutes. You might fall asleep for an instant and dream an entire journey. That elasticity is tied to the way the brain processes narrative. In waking life, time is measured externally by clocks, calendars, daylight. But in dreams, time is internal. There's no clock ticking, no sun rising, only your mind, stitching together scenes, emotions, memories, like a story made from fragments. And stories don't obey time. They follow meaning, dream logic, and the illusion of continuity. In dreams, things seem to make sense. Until you wake up. You might be talking to someone who has your father's voice, your teacher's face, and your friend's laugh, and in the dream, it's obvious who they are. You don't question why the sky is orange, or why you're underwater without drowning. And the same goes for time. Events flow into one another, but not because they're logically connected, because they're emotionally connected. Your dream skips from place to place, but your brain supplies a feeling of continuity, as if you've always been here, even if here keeps changing. That's why dream time feels coherent while you're in it, because your mind fills in the blanks. It builds a timeline that doesn't actually exist, a ghost clock ticking behind the curtain. Lucid dreams and time awareness. But what happens when you know you're dreaming? In lucid dreams, you become aware of the dream. You realize the world around you isn't real. And sometimes dreamers report an increased sense of control, not just over actions but over time itself. They can slow it down, pause, rewind, extend the moment. But here's something stranger. In studies where lucid dreamers were asked to perform a task, like counting to 10 or moving their eyes in specific rhythms, researchers found that time passed similarly in the dream as in waking life. But the subjective experience often changed. Some moments felt slower, others faster. Lucidity doesn't fix dream time. It just lets you notice it, like shining a flashlight on a current you'd been floating in blindly. Déjà rêve. Remembering dreams before they happen. There's déjà vu, the feeling of having lived a moment before. And then there's déjà rêve, the feeling of remembering a dream during waking life. Like you've seen this moment, felt it, dreamed it. Some researchers believe these are just fragments, dreams forgotten and re-remembered. Others suggest that dreams predict events, not through mysticism, but through pattern recognition. Your brain simulates scenarios in sleep, and occasionally one of those simulations aligns with reality. But either way, these moments blur the boundary between dream time and waking time. They make you wonder, what if dreams are echoes, not just of memory, but of potential futures? Time loops and recurring dream worlds. Some dreams don't just skip through time, they loop it. You wake up, brush your teeth, go to work, and then realize you're still dreaming. You wake up again, and again. Dream loops can feel endless, each now indistinguishable from the last, like a hall of mirrors made from moments. Other dreams take you to the same world, night after night. A dream city, a recurring landscape, characters who remember you. Dream time in these cases develops its own history, its own continuity, separate from waking life, as if there are two timelines, one in the day and one in the dark. The absence of time in dreams. But sometimes, dreams don't have time at all. There's no before, no after, just presence. You're floating, watching, absorbing. No motion, no story, just a feeling. These dreams are harder to describe. They don't unfold, they simply are. Some people call them mystical, others meditative, states where time as we know it stops mattering. And maybe that's a clue. That time is not a constant, but a mode of experience, a way the mind organizes change. When there's no change, there's no time. Memory, narrative, and the construction of time. What creates the flow of time in dreams? Not clocks, not physics, but memory. Your dream is being written as it happens, and your sense of time flows from remembering what just occurred. That memory creates context, and context creates direction. Remove memory, and the dream becomes static, just a string of images. But with memory, even partial, the dream becomes a story. And stories have time, beginning, middle, end. So maybe dream time isn't an illusion. Maybe it's a narrative artifact, a timeline authored moment by moment by your dreaming mind. Time distortion and emotional weight. Why do some dreams feel fast and others eternal? It's not the number of dream events. It's their emotional intensity. A single moment of fear or awe or love can feel like an entire experience. The brain seems to stretch time around emotion, like gravity warping space. In waking life too, time feels slower when you're in danger and faster when you're distracted. But in dreams, this distortion is amplified. There are no external reference points, only feeling. A dream where you search for someone can feel like days because of the longing. A single glance can feel like an hour if it carries enough meaning. In dreams, emotion is the clock. Nightmares and the freeze of time. Nightmares are a special case. They often involve stasis, being stuck. You're paralyzed, trapped, running in slow motion, or time itself seems frozen, stretched into terror. In these dreams, the normal flow of time collapses. Moments hang in the air, thick and heavy. And even if the actual dream lasts a minute, it can feel endless. Because fear slows perception, and perception bends time. When you finally wake up, it's like being released from a suspension. A moment that lasted too long. A minute that felt like forever. Philosophical questions. Are dreams alternate timelines? Now let's step further out. What are dreams, really? Fictions? Simulations? Neural noise? Or are they something more? Some philosophers have speculated that dreams may be glimpses into other selves, alternate realities, branching timelines, not because they believe in fantasy, but because dream logic sometimes suggests possibility. In dreams, you can make choices you wouldn't make while awake. Explore identities you've never known. Live out paths not taken. Could dream time be a kind of temporal sandbox? A place where the mind experiments with time, causality, selfhood? A rehearsal space for alternate realities? It may sound strange, but then again, so do dreams. Time in dreams versus time in death. Now for something quiet and difficult. Many people who have near-death experiences report something curious. A life review, a flash of all their memories, but not as a blur, as a panorama, vivid, detailed, immersive. Some say they lived through whole lives in the space of a few seconds. Others say time stopped entirely, that they were nowhere and everywhere. Is this dreamlike? Is the end of life a final dream? A place where time unravels? No one knows. But if time is made of memory, attention, and meaning, then maybe the final moment expands to hold it all. One last, eternal now. The mystery remains. So what is time in dreams? A replica, a distortion, an invention? Is it rooted in biology, or emotion, or something else? We don't know. But we do know this. Time in dreams is not what it is by day. It's not measured in minutes, but in moments. Not in clocks, but in changes, in meaning, in memory, in mystery. And maybe that's the real truth. That time, at its heart, is not a quantity. It's a quality, a feeling. The end of time, according to Carlo Rovelli. We are used to thinking of time as a river, flowing, steady, always moving forward. We watch the seconds fall like raindrops. We measure our lives in birthdays, sunsets, and wrinkles. We imagine the past behind us, the future ahead. But what if all of that is an illusion? What if time, as we know it, doesn't exist? Tonight, we explore the ideas of physicist and philosopher Carlo Rovelli and the slow unraveling of time. This is the story of how time ends, not with a bang, but with a whisper, a world without instants. Carlo Rovelli begins with a simple truth, that the concept of now doesn't exist in physics. Not really. There is no universal clock, no absolute moment that we all share. What you call now is not what I call now. For someone falling into a black hole, time stretches. For someone on a mountain, time moves slightly faster than at sea level. Even two people standing side by side experience time differently. This is relativity. Einstein showed us that time is not a shared stage, but a dance, where each observer has their own rhythm. And Rovelli takes it further. There is no universal present, no global now, only local happenings, only events unfolding in their own frames. Time is not what it seems. Rovelli invites us to peel back the layers. We think of time as flowing, past, present, future, but physics doesn't see a flowing thing. It sees relations. It sees change. It sees the configuration of a system at one point and at another. But the flow, the movement, that is something our minds create. It is a story the brain tells to make sense of change. We impose a narrative. We link events together. But the universe doesn't tick. Time, as Rovelli says, is not a line. It's a web. The crumbling of time in physics. As physics advances, time begins to fall apart. In Newtonian mechanics, time is absolute, a perfect, ever-ticking clock. In Einstein's relativity, time becomes flexible. In thermodynamics, time is tied to entropy, the increase of disorder. But even entropy depends on perspective. A broken glass seems to have more entropy than an unbroken one, but only because we define it that way, based on how we observe the system. In quantum mechanics, the equations are symmetrical. They work the same forward or backward in time. And in quantum gravity, where Rovelli works, time disappears completely. At the most fundamental level, there is no time, the world without time. So what happens if we remove time from the universe? If time is not fundamental, what remains? Rovelli says we are left with relations. Particles interact, fields vibrate, events occur, but they do so without a ticking clock. Imagine a world not as a film playing forward, but as a mosaic of interconnected events. No before, no after, just networked realities linked by causality. In this view, change exists, but time does not. The universe is not evolving in time. It is simply structured in a certain way, and that structure gives rise to the illusion of time. The thermal time hypothesis. But if time isn't real, where does our experience of it come from? Why do we feel it flowing? Rovelli offers a possibility, the thermal time hypothesis. The idea is that time emerges from entropy, from thermodynamics, from the fact that we live in an environment where things tend to go from ordered to disordered. In other words, time is a side effect of temperature, of heat moving from one place to another, of systems out of equilibrium. If everything were perfectly balanced, time would vanish. But because we live inside a hot, messy, dynamic universe, we perceive time, not because it's fundamental, but because of our place within the system. Time is a perspective. Rovelli reminds us that the concept of time is tied to our perspective. It's how we as humans make sense of change. It's how we perceive motion, remember the past, anticipate the future. But the universe doesn't remember. It doesn't anticipate. It just is. We are like fish in a current, feeling the water rush past, not realizing the water itself is still. Time flows for us, not because the universe flows, but because we flow. We are time-bound creatures, navigating a world of relations. We create time from experience, memory, entropy, and the illusion of direction. Our sense of time's direction, that it moves forward, is rooted in memory. We remember the past, We do not remember the future. But this, Rovelli says, is tied to entropy. In low entropy conditions, like the ones we evolved in, there is a clear difference between before and after. An egg cracks but does not uncrack. A footprint appears in the sand, but not the other way around. This asymmetry gives rise to memory, to story, to identity. But if you could flip entropy, live in a reversed world, you might remember the future instead, and the past would be hidden. The arrow of time is not universal. It's local. It's a feature of our position in the universe. The present doesn't exist. One of Rovelli's most provocative claims is this: the present does not exist. Not objectively. There is no single moment that is now for everyone. Because of relativity, what is happening now for you might be the past for someone else, or the future. In this view, the universe is not divided into a past, present, and future. It's a vast interconnected structure where every event simply is, not flowing, not becoming, just being. Time becomes not a river, but a landscape, and we are travelers mistaking the terrain for a path. Quantum gravity and the death of time. In the field of loop quantum gravity, Rovelli's own area of research, time doesn't appear at all. Instead, the universe is described as a network of quantum events. Each node connects to others, not through time, but through correlation. What matters is not when something happens, but how it's related to something else. The equations of quantum gravity don't evolve. They describe states, not transitions. In this view, time isn't a river. It's not even a loop. It's a fabric of relationships without a center, without direction, and without a clock. What replaces time? If time disappears, what's left? Rovelli says change. Events still happen, but not in a global sequence. Instead, we measure how things change relative to each other. We don't ask what time is it. We ask, how much has one system changed compared to another? Think of two clocks. One ticking seconds. One measuring radioactive decay. There's no absolute time connecting them, only their relation. One might speed up, the other might slow down, but their relationship remains. That's what Rovelli calls the relational view. Time is not a thing in itself. It's a way of describing relationships between events, the human side of time. But Rovelli is not just a physicist. He's also a poet. He understands that time is personal. He speaks of the time between lovers, the time we lose in memory, the time that slips away when we age. He says the end of time in physics does not erase the beauty of lived time. In fact, it makes it more precious, because if time is not fundamental, then every moment is a construction, a fleeting arrangement, and in that impermanence we find depth, meaning, tenderness. The more time fades from physics, the more it glows in life. Letting go of time. Carlo Rovelli challenges us to let go, to stop clinging to time as something fixed, to release the illusion of now, of flow, of permanence. This is not nihilism, it's freedom. The freedom to see reality not as a story unfolding, but as a pattern shimmering. Not as a line, but a constellation, where each moment, past, future, and present, is part of the whole, not disappearing, not becoming, just being. When we stop trying to hold on to time, we find something else. Stillness, clarity, the pure presence of existence. The end of time is the beginning of wonder. Rovelli does not give us answers. He gives us questions. invitations. He reminds us that physics is not finished, that the mystery is not solved. That time, in the end, may not be what we think it is, or need it to be. And maybe that's the gift, that, in letting go of time, we return to wonder, to awe, to the quiet knowledge that everything changes, and nothing is ever lost, not because it exists in time, but because it exists at all. Anti-time, the unreality of time. John McTaggart. Time seems so simple. It passes, it flows, it carries us from birth to death. We remember the past, we anticipate the future, and the present? It's all we ever seem to have. But what if none of this is real? What if time itself is an illusion? Not just misunderstood, but impossible. Tonight, we explore one of the strangest and most radical ideas in all of philosophy. The idea that time is unreal. This is the world of John McTaggart, the man who proposed what we might call anti-time, a universe where the past, present, and future are illusions, where change is incoherent, and where the very idea of time collapses under its own contradictions. So let's begin, not by going forward, but by stepping outside of time. Who was John McTaggart? John McTaggart, Ellis McTaggart, was born in 1866, an English philosopher, quietly working in the tradition of metaphysical idealism. He wasn't famous, not flashy, not poetic, but in 1908 he published a paper titled The Unreality of Time. It would become one of the most provocative works in modern philosophy. McTaggart argued, carefully, logically, unapologetically, that time does not exist, not because we misunderstand it, but because it contains contradictions that cannot be resolved. He didn't believe we live in time. He believed we invented it. And that's what makes him not just a philosopher of time, but a philosopher of anti-time, the ACs and the BCs. To understand McTaggart's argument, we need to step into some definitions. He divided our understanding of time into two concepts: the AC soup, the B series. Let's start with the AC soup. This is how we normally experience time, as a flow. Moments are labeled as past, present, or future. A birthday, once future, becomes present, and then slips into the past. The ACCE is dynamic. It's the sense of time moving. Now, the B series is different. It doesn't use past, present, or future. Instead, it describes events as earlier than or later than other events. It's a fixed sequence. Napoleon's birth is earlier than World War II. The invention of fire is earlier than the moon landing. That ordering never changes. The B series is static. There's no flow, no present moment, just a structure of temporal relations. McTaggart believed the B series alone could not explain time, because it's too rigid. Only the A seam includes change, what makes time feel alive. But then, he turned around and said, the AC series doesn't make sense either, and therefore, time is unreal. The paradox of the AC. So what's wrong with the A series? Why can't we have a future that becomes the present, then fades into the past? McTaggart's answer was simple and devastating. He said, for an event to truly exist in time, it must be future, then present, then past. But those are mutually exclusive properties. An event cannot be all three, future, present, and past, at once. And if we say it only has one of those properties at a time, then we are describing it using time. We say, it was future, then it became present, then it became past. But now we've used time to describe time. We've created a circular argument. And that McTaggart said, is a contradiction. So we can't make sense of time using the A series, but we also can't explain change using only the B series. And without change, there is no time. So, he concluded, time cannot be real. The illusion of change. Change is the heartbeat of time. Without change, time is meaningless. But McTaggart believed that change itself was an illusion. Why? Because change requires events to gain and lose properties. An event is first future, then present, then past. But if this sequence is impossible, as he argued, then change itself breaks down. Everything that appears to change is actually static, like frames of a film, unmoving, existing in eternal relation to each other. We only perceive change because of the A Caesar, our belief in past, present, and future. And if the A sequence is incoherent, then change is not real. And if change is not real, time is not real. Objections and responses. Many philosophers have challenged McTaggart. They say he's confusing language with reality. Just because past, present, and future are relative terms doesn't mean they're contradictory. Or he misunderstands how properties change across time. It's not that events have all properties at once, but that they possess them in succession. But McTaggart would say, that's the problem. You're using succession, another word for time, to explain time. You're assuming what you're trying to prove, and so the contradiction remains. In the end, McTaggart believed we can't save time, not without falling into paradox. So we must let it go and embrace a reality without it. Anti-time, a universe without flow. So what does it mean to live in a world without time? To live in a universe of anti-time? It means that the structure of the world is eternal. Every event that ever has or will occur exists, not in sequence, not unfolding, but like a constellation, points in a network. Each event is real, but not becoming. There is no now, there is no change, just being, just relation. And us, we're like passengers watching a movie that was never filmed. We experience the illusion of time because we are built that way. But outside of our perception, there is no movement, only stillness. McTaggart's idealism, why time isn't needed. McTaggart was not just arguing about physics. He was a metaphysical idealist. He believed that reality is fundamentally mind-like, not made of matter and space, but of relations between ideas, thoughts, and entities outside of space and time. In this framework, time is a mental projection. It's a way that finite minds, like ours, organize experience. But it doesn't reflect the true structure of reality. True reality, he believed, is timeless. Ordered, yes. Relational, yes. But without flow, without passing, without time, anti-time and modern echoes. It's tempting to dismiss McTaggart as a relic, a curious thinker with a strange conclusion. But the truth is, modern physics echoes him. In Einstein's theory of relativity, there is no absolute present. The block universe, where all times exist equally, is a cousin to McTaggart's anti-time. In quantum gravity, time vanishes from the equation. In the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, the universe is timeless. Even in thermodynamics, the arrow of time is tied to entropy, a local, emergent feature. Time, it seems, is not fundamental. Just like McTaggart said, the deeper we go into reality, the more time seems to fall away. But we still feel it. Still, we live in time. We feel it, we fear it, we are shaped by it. We remember, we anticipate, we grow older. And McTaggart doesn't deny this. He simply says, it's not real, like a mirage. It appears real because of how our minds are structured. But just as dreams feel real while you're dreaming, so does time, until you wake up, living without time. So how do we live without time? If McTaggart is right, what does that mean for us? Perhaps not much. We still act, we still love, we still mourn. But perhaps it invites us to shift our thinking, to stop obsessing over clocks and calendars, to recognize that each moment is not part of a stream, but a complete whole, not flowing into the next, but fully itself. And if all moments exist equally, then maybe nothing is ever truly lost. Maybe the past still exists. Maybe every now is forever. Not because time continues, but because time never was. Beyond time, toward presence. Anti-time doesn't mean nihilism. It means we are free. Free to step outside the rush. Free to see each moment as full, already eternal, without waiting for the next. Presence, then, is not a spiritual slogan. It's a metaphysical truth. If time is unreal, then presence is all there is. Not a point on a line, but the whole picture, timeless, still, real. Time in a simulation. When the clock is just code, what if everything around you is simulated? Not in the poetic sense, but literally. What if your thoughts, your memories, your breath in this moment are all part of a program, rendered, calculated, processed? And if that were true, what would it mean for time? Is it still flowing, still real, or just a line of code in someone else's machine? Tonight, we ask a question that reshapes everything. What is time in a simulation? Let's begin. The simulation hypothesis. It starts with a theory. Simple, provocative. We live in a simulation. Popularized by philosopher Nick Bostrom, the simulation hypothesis suggests that a sufficiently advanced civilization could simulate entire realities, down to conscious beings. If they could do this, and if they did it often, then statistically, you are more likely to be living in a simulated world than in the original base reality. Your memories, your childhood, your history, all rendered. Your body, data. The sky above you, pixels. The laws of physics, lines of code. It sounds like science fiction, but it's taken seriously by minds at MIT, Oxford, Google. Even Elon Musk once said, there's a 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance we're living in base reality. So if this world is simulated, what happens to time? Time as a system parameter. In a simulation, time is not absolute. It's a variable, a parameter the system can adjust. Just like gravity, color, resolution. Time might be processed at a constant rate, like frames per second in a video game, or it might slow down, or pause, or branch. From the inside, you'd never know. If the simulation is seamless enough, every adjustment would feel natural. Your sense of now would align with the system's ticking. But if the system paused you for 1,000 years, you'd never notice. You would still say, this is the present. And in that sense, time in a simulation is artificial. It isn't flowing from past to future. It's being played, like a movie, like a file. Simulated clocks, real perception. Look at a clock in a simulation. The hands move, the numbers change, seconds tick by. But these are just symbols. They're outputs, designed to reflect internal processes, like a dashboard gauge on a car simulator. The clock is not measuring real, external time. It's displaying the state of the simulation's internal loop. In that sense, simulated time is circular. Every second is a cycle, a refresh, a loop in the processor. Time, then, is not a river. It's a recursive function, measured not by physics, but by instruction count. Your minutes are system ticks. Your hours are logical operations. You live not by time, but by code execution. The illusion of continuity. In a simulation, there is no need for continuity. Frames can be generated out of sequence. Moments can be recomputed. Memory can be rewritten. You feel a flow. But the system doesn't need to flow anything. It only needs to generate the present state and any past that appears consistent. If you remember being 10 years old, it's because the system has rendered those memories into your current state. There is no need for that past to have truly happened, just that it seems coherent. Time, then, is a narrative effect generated in real time, like a character in a novel who believes in yesterday because the author wrote it in. Time dilation in simulated worlds. In computer systems, processing time varies. Some calculations are heavier, some are lighter. Imagine a simulated being experiencing lag, not because their world is slowing down, but because processing resources have shifted elsewhere. Your second might take longer to compute than someone else's. Your consciousness might be paused while other parts of the simulation are updated. But you would never notice, because your awareness resumes only when the code says so. This leads to a strange truth. In a simulation, time is local, not universal. Each region, each being, each memory loop could operate on a different temporal scale, yet still feel like they're moving through one shared now. Entropy and the simulation of time's arrow. What about entropy? In physics, the arrow of time, the direction from past to future, is tied to entropy. Things move from order to disorder, ice melts, smoke disperses. In a simulation, entropy can be faked. It can be modeled, written in as a law. But it's not an emergent feature, it's a rule. The programmers might have decided to simulate a universe with increasing entropy to mimic real physics. Or they could reverse it, or randomize it, or make it cyclic. In this sense, the arrow of time is artificial, not inevitable, but designed. In code, there's no reason things can't reverse. Unbreak the glass, resurrect the dead, rewind the tape. If you're simulated, time is whatever the system allows. Consciousness and temporal experience. But time isn't just something we see, it's something we feel. We remember the past, we anticipate the future. We experience the moment as now. In a simulation, these could be modules of experience, chunks of code attached to your data structure. Your memories could be loaded into RAM, your anticipations calculated in real time. You don't need a past. You need a memory of a past, and that memory can be written on demand. This means the flow of time is not external. It is a property of simulated consciousness. Your mind is the clock, and the second you stop observing, the clock can stop too. Simulation pauses and soft reboots. Now imagine this. You're walking down the street, you blink, and the system pauses you for a second or a century. You are frozen. The world is frozen. But when the simulation resumes, you keep walking. You never notice. The blink was just a blink. This is the strange possibility in a digital world. Time can be paused. The program can stop, save state, resume later. You don't need continuity, only consistency. It's not about what really happened. It's about what seems like it did. Nested simulations and recursive time. What if the simulation contains simulations? Worlds within worlds. A civilization inside your simulated world builds its own simulation. What happens to time in these nested systems? Each layer could run at different speeds. What is a second to you might be a millennium below, or vice versa. This leads to recursive time, where time is relative to the system's depth. No absolute tempo, no shared timeline, only layers of clock cycles tied to layers of code. Time then becomes not a dimension, but a structure of dependency, each world ticking to its own drum, death, continuity, and save points. In a simulation, what happens when you die? Is the program deleted, or is it simply paused? Archived? Reloaded? In gaming terms, maybe your consciousness is a save file, restorable, reconfigurable. What we call death might be a session end, or a system update, or the beginning of a new subroutine. If time is simulated, then permanence is a myth, and what we fear as final may be just a file state, wait somewhere, the start of time, when the simulation booted up. In cosmology, we speak of the Big Bang, the origin of time. But in simulation theory, time may have started when the system was initialized, not an explosion, but an execution, the moment the program ran, a boot-up event. Before that, no time, no space, no memory, only potential. And perhaps even now, time only exists while the simulation runs. If the program stops, so does the clock, not with a bang, but with a system shut down. Do we have free will in simulated time? If time is coded, are we trapped? Are we puppets in a timeline? Or do we have freedom? It depends. A deterministic simulation might run like a film, pre-written, unchangeable. A probabilistic one might include randomness. Some argue that consciousness itself arises from uncertainty, and that freedom is emergent. But if the system can rewind, rerun, reset, then all your choices could be replayed, and you would never know. Freedom in a simulation may be felt, but not confirmed. We act, we choose, but only within the script we're given. Time outside the simulation. Now imagine the operators, the ones outside the simulation. To them, your whole life might pass in a minute. They could pause your world, zoom in, restart it 1,000 times. From their view, you are not bound by time. You are a file, an instance, a loop. What is now to you is already past to them, or hasn't happened yet. Time, in their world, is above yours, and to them your story is like a page, something they can turn at will. The beauty of illusion. Now, here's the final twist. Even if time is simulated, even if it's a code, a loop, a playback, it still feels real. You still fall in love, still lose people, still dream, still hope, still ache. And that feeling is everything, because meaning doesn't require truth, only presence. And maybe that's enough. To be here, to be now, even if that now is just a frame. Timeless consciousness, beyond the clock of the mind. Time is everywhere. It frames our lives like a silent companion, always walking beside us. We measure it in moments, in memories, in milestone. And yet, when you sit in silence, when you lose yourself in a sunset, when you slip into a dreamless sleep, time disappears. What remains is something else, a presence, a quiet, a kind of awareness that doesn't seem to move. Tonight, we go beyond the ticking clock, beyond thought, beyond self, into a strange and subtle space, a space that some have called timeless consciousness, the puzzle of consciousness. Let's start with the mystery at the heart of everything. Consciousness. It is the most familiar thing in the world, and the most mysterious. You are conscious, not just alive, but aware. You see, you feel, you think, you dream. But where does this come from? Why is it like this? And what does time have to do with it? Most of the time we assume consciousness unfolds in time. We experience a stream of thoughts, a timeline of memories. But what if that's not quite right? What if time is not in consciousness, but consciousness is outside of time? What if the deepest self you are is not a point in the flow, but the container of it? The screen on which time plays, but which itself does not move. The now that doesn't pass. You've heard the phrase, "be here now." But what is now? We think of it as the present moment, a razor-thin slice between past and future. But if you try to hold it, it vanishes. Every now becomes a then. And yet, you are always in the now. You cannot leave it. You've never been in the past. You've never visited the future. Only now. So maybe this now isn't a moment at all. Maybe it's something deeper. Not a slice of time, but a timeless field, always present, always aware. And perhaps that's what consciousness is, the place where now never ends, beyond the stream of thought. In meditation traditions, there's a practice called watching the thinker. You sit, breathe, notice thoughts come and go, images, memories, emotions. But if you go deep enough, something strange happens. The thoughts fall away, and yet you remain. Awareness remains. Not thinking, not remembering, just being. No time, no content, just presence. Still, silent, pure. This is the taste of timeless consciousness. Not awareness of something, but awareness as itself. Unmoving, unchanging, just here. Is time in the mind? Psychologists and neuroscientists have studied how we experience time, and what they've found is fascinating. Time perception is constructed. Your brain is not reading time off some internal clock. It's building it from change, from motion, from memory. If nothing changes, time seems to vanish. That's why time flies when you're immersed, and slows when you're in pain. Time is not absolute. It's felt, shaped by attention, emotion, story. So if time is built by the brain, then maybe consciousness in its purest form is outside that construction. Maybe it's not in time at all, but watching it, like a dreamer watching the dream, mystical states and the loss of time. Across cultures, across centuries, people have reported strange moments. States of deep meditation, near-death experiences, psychedelic visions, moments of awe, and they often say the same thing. Time disappeared. I was outside of time. It felt like eternity. I was in a state where everything just was. These aren't just metaphors. They point to something real, a mode of awareness that is not moving forward, not bound to sequence, but simply present, whole, complete. Not a moment, but all moments at once. Julian Barbour and the End of Time. Physicist Julian Barbour has a radical idea. He says time doesn't exist, that the universe is made up of static configurations, snapshots of reality he calls nows, each one complete, each one timeless. And what we experience as time is just the sequence of nouns our consciousness perceives, like flipping through a photo album. But the album doesn't move, only our mind does. In this view, consciousness is not in time. It is the light moving through the pages, the source of the sequence, but itself untouched. Eckhart Tolle and the Power of Now. Spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle speaks often about the present, not the clock's version of now, but the deep now, the timeless space beneath thought, where the mind is silent, where the self dissolves, and what remains is peace. In that state you are not remembering, you are not anticipating, you are simply aware. And in that awareness, time falls away. There is no story, no past, no future, only presence. And in that presence is liberation, the dreamless dreamer. Think about deep, dreamless sleep. No images, no memories, no thinking. And yet, you wake up and say, I slept well. Who was there? Who experienced that silence? Not the mind, not the ego, but something deeper, something timeless. Consciousness does not depend on content. It can exist without thoughts, without emotions, without time. That's why some call it the dreamless dreamer, the witness behind all things. Quiet, still, eternal, death and the edge of time. What happens when you die? The body stops. The brain stops. Time as we know it ends. But does awareness? Some traditions say no. They say that what you truly are is not in time, and so it does not die. It was never born. It simply is. Not as a person, not as a thought, but as the field of consciousness itself. Timeless, unbound, and maybe that's why so many near-death accounts describe a light, not a place, not a story, but a state, a return to what we've always been. Timelessness in everyday life. You don't have to die to experience timelessness. It's hidden in plain sight. A moment of awe, a deep breath, a silent gaze. Time slows, or stops, and there you are, awareness resting in itself. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to understand. You just need to notice, to look between thoughts, to listen between sounds, to feel the space between seconds. And there it is, that quiet, vast presence. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, just this. Consciousness as the background. Everything you've ever known has appeared in awareness. Thoughts, emotions, sights. They come and go, but awareness stays. It doesn't age. It doesn't change. It doesn't move. It is the background, like the screen behind the movie, and that screen is not in time. Time happens on it, but it itself is timeless, and that, perhaps, is what you truly are. Not the character, not the plot, but the presence. Watching, silently, always. Is timeless consciousness the source? Some say that consciousness is not a product of the brain, but the source of reality itself, that space, time, and matter arise within it, that it is the ocean, and the universe is the wave. In that view, consciousness is not just timeless, it is the creator of time and everything else. All things appear, play, disappear, but the witness remains, unborn, undying, infinite. And if that's true, then the search for truth is not a journey forward, but a journey inward, back to the stillness that never began and will never end. Letting go of the clock, we spend our lives chasing time, saving time, wasting time, killing time. But what if the thing we're chasing is an illusion? What if the peace we seek is not in the future, but here? Not in achievement, but in awareness? To find timelessness, we don't need to change the world. We just need to stop chasing, to stop counting, to stop measuring our lives by clocks and calendars, and instead to listen, to rest, to remember that what we are was never in time to begin with, the still point in the turning world. T.S. Eliot once wrote, "At the still point of the turning world, there the dance is." That's what timeless consciousness is. The still point, the center of the wheel, the silence between the notes. Time may dance around it, but it doesn't move. It simply is. And if you find it, if you rest in it, then time no longer owns you. You are not late. You are not aging. You are not running out. You are simply here.